agreement between the Libyan future government and their governments about this.
Ambassador, a lot of people consider you to be very brave for what you're doing and speaking out, and some of us are wondering, do you fear for some of your family back home, and what is your relationship like with Tripoli when they call the mission here? Do you take their phone calls? What is the communication like?
No, I am not brave. The braves are those who are facing the politics in Libya. Those who are killed in the streets. I'm doing nothing. I'm just make the international community aware of their cause. So I think whatever the threat is, it is for me it is minimum with in comparison with those who go to the street and face the dictator there.
What about your relationship with the ministry back in Tripoli? I mean, do you
no one of our mission is still in contact with the headquarters in Tripoli. We said that clearly. We are with the people. We don't take instructions from the foreign affairs there. Thank you.
We were just listening to Ibrahim Dabashi, the Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations on behalf of Libya there, summing up his relationship, saying right now his mission isn't taking any calls or instructions from the headquarters in Tripoli. It was interesting that on the point of mercenaries, he said they are criminals. International law will take that into account. If it doesn't, the future Libyan government will. I think we can bring our correspondent, Kristin Salumi, back into this. On the point of mercenaries, there was some mention, some discussion of mercenaries in the session in the Security Council that followed the adoption of the resolution. But was actually anything adopted to try and deal with the problem of mercenaries coming into Libya?
No, that hasn't been mentioned in the resolution. This was very much targeted at the regime itself. It's an attempt to put pressure on the regime and not to hurt the people of Libya themselves. That's another sensitive area for many members of the council when they impose sanctions. They want to be sure that it is going to be targeted and not have a wider impact on the general population and perhaps hurt them. They've learned from experience that sometimes that's the unforeseen result when sanctions are imposed. Listen, everybody here knows that this resolution is not a panacea, that it's not going to stop killing in the streets immediately. It can't stop bullets. It's paper. The weight of what has happened here is that the international community has spoken with a clear and unified voice, and they've spoken quickly and they've spoken strongly, and they are just hoping that will have an influence on, if not Gaddafi, then the people around him. And the ambassador from Libya, who we just heard speak, very clearly in the council called on members of the military in Libya to stop what they're doing, to turn away from the regime, and to support the people. It was a very personal appeal to fellow Libyans in power to support the people.
All right, Kristin Salumi, our correspondent there, has been following all those developments in the UN Security Council. Well, of course, just before that, we've heard perhaps some of the strongest worded language yet from the Obama administration, which is actually now calling on Muammar al-Gaddafi to step down. Let's get more on this from Jane Dutton, who's in our Washington, D.C. broadcast center. Jane.
Thanks for that, Sammy. Well, the call came during a telephone conversation between the US president and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. Barack Obama said Colonel Gaddafi had lost the legitimacy to rule after using violence on his people. He added that the Libyan leader needs to do what's right for his country by leaving now. And hot on the heels of that came another strongly worded statement from the U.S. Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. She said the U.S. was moving quickly on steps to hold the Libyan government accountable for its violation of human rights. She added that the U.S. was working with its friends to mobilize a strong and unified response from the international community. Well, the chorus of concern urging the U.S. government to act swiftly against Gaddafi's regime has only grown louder in recent days. Al Jazeera's Monica Villamizar has more now from the latest rally at the White House.
Different rallies converged today in front of the White House. There was a rally in solidarity with Bahrain, with Libya, and also with Yemen. They all came in front of the White House to send a message to President Obama regarding the situation in the Middle East. We can see some of the signs they were carrying. The unified message is basically that the regimes there must go and that the United States, they want the support from the United States in this whole process. Now, the president announced earlier sanctions against Libya and then took a tougher stance. But this is what people, members of the Arab American community here in Washington and the suburbs, had to say.
You know, he's been really slow in responding to the massacres. We expected more from him. What he has done so far, any other country has said, but we have not seen action at all so far. Sanctions do not help. Sanctions are only going to be deterring the people.
But I would like to see action. There has to be tangible action, no more blowing hot air. We have to take action immediately, because with time, more souls are going to be lost.
Down, down with Gaddafi! Down, down with Gaddafi! Down, down with Gaddafi!
It's very difficult. I don't know what's the next step. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't know what's going to happen.
Libya Hurriyah! Libya Hurriyah! Libya Hurriyah!
I see it as a disappointing. At the same time, I understand the U.S. position. They have their own interest. They're thinking of the oil, and they're thinking of their citizens who are still entrapped in Libya. So once foreigners are out of Libya, maybe they'll be more free to act swiftly.
It's your time! It's your choice! It's your time! It's your choice!
Most people coincided on one thing, and that is that they will keep on coming here in front of the White House and protest as long as there are revolutionary movements taking place in the Middle East. Monica Villamizar, AlJazeera in Washington.
Well, this is quite significant. It's the first time the United States is supporting a resolution that refers a case to the International Criminal Court. It's calling for an investigation into possible crimes against humanity by members of Gaddafi's regime. For more on this, I'm joined here by Hafid Al-Gwal. He's a Libya and Middle East analyst. Do you think that'll work?
Yes, I mean, it has to work for the sake of the international community, not just for Libya.
But why do you think it'll work? Is it just playing on those closest to him?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, these are people who are who perceive the situation as they are fighting for themselves, to protect themselves, because they know if Gaddafi falls, they are on the front line. So the question now is to raise the stake for them, and to make them recalculate their positions.
Because I can't imagine that Gaddafi is going to allow himself to be taken away, sort of all shackled up. So do you think there is a possibility that he could be turned over?
I think that this is one of the possibilities that the people around him, in order to try to get themselves out of this situation that they're in, is to try to arrest him and then hand him over. But I agree with you. I don't think Gaddafi himself is going to turn. I mean, it's quite obvious from his speeches that this is a man who lives on another planet. So I don't think, trying to arrest him on this planet is going to work.
Now, the ICC and the fact that the US, who's not even a signatory, has pushed for action in that department, what do you think it makes of how the US is operating? We've had those calls from Barack Obama for him to step down. Do you think the US is now using the UN to get what it wants?
Precisely. Because the US, and smartly so, knows that it has a credibility gap around the Arab world in particular, but also in Libya.
Crisis more than gap, surely.
But and in Libya, because they have been perceived as trying to sort of clean up Gaddafi's image along with the UK over the last few years, on behalf of a lot of the oil companies who were pushing for contracts. So they realized that taking unilateral action alone, or trying to appear in the lead of these kind of international efforts, will only serve Gaddafi purposes, because that could divert attention and makes him seem like he's confronting a foreign invasion. I think it is a smart move to use the international system. I think, however, they need to bring in more clearly some of the Arab and Islamic part of the international order. So it's not perceived as a Western-led campaign against Libya.
And I suppose the Arab League and the African Union, it would be interesting to see what sort of role they play. And
I mean, to be honest, everybody knows that they are in large measure, ineffective organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have the capacity, they don't have, but at least they could give the right umbrella, the political umbrella, that this is an international effort that includes all of these elements, including Libya's Arab neighbors and Islamic counterparts.
Okay, you say it's an international effort, but ultimately it seems to be agreed from all parties that it's only the Libyans themselves who can enforce any change.
Absolutely.
That's the modern version now, isn't it, of action on the ground. At the same time, how are the politicians within Libya putting this together? Are you happy with what you're seeing, forming some sort of interim government in the meantime, sort of interim ruling body? Because after all, these men are close to, or they have been close to Gaddafi in the past.
Well, precisely, I am surprised, but pleasantly surprised. I think the Libyan revolutionaries have proven not only that they could confront Gaddafi and rid themselves of him and his cronies in their own areas, but also manage a very peaceful and a very civilized transition. I mean, every report we're getting is that pretty much most of the country that is under the control of people, anti-Gaddafi forces, is calm, in peace, and they are actively, it is amazing, and quite actively self-organizing themselves to carry on day to day. The only chaos you're seeing is coming from Gaddafi himself. And it is important, I think, for the international community and the world to really realize, not only in Libya, but we've seen this in Tunisia, in Egypt, and in Libya, that the larger population are the peaceful, civilized, capable people who are articulate, who are effective, who are decent, and it is the regimes who are the ones who are practicing thuggery and criminal activity. I mean, these were not governments; these are mafia organizations that have been running countries. And I think it is important that the world realizes that stability in these parts of the world does not come from these governments; it comes from connecting with the population.
Okay, Hafid Al-Gwal, thanks for coming in and sharing your thoughts on that with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, despite international condemnation, several Latin American nations are maintaining their support for the Libyan regime. This is what they say.
We do support the government of Libya, the independence of Libya. We want peace for Libya, peace for all the countries of the world, and we have to vehemently oppose interventionist tendencies.
The decision will have to be made by the people. What is clear is that, in Libya's case, a ferocious campaign has been launched against Gaddafi.
And that's it from us for now. Back to Sami in Doha.
Thanks so much, Jane. Well, you're watching Al Jazeera. Quick reminder now, the very latest developments on Libya over the last 90 minutes. Well, the United Nations, as you might have just seen, has just voted to slap sanctions and other